Welcome to Money and Impact. My name's Suzanne Caldeira. I'm a mortgage originator. I've been in lending for the past 23 years, and a lot of what I deal with is money, how people handle it, how they need it, how they use it to fund their purchases or to handle their refinances and keep their homes. The other part of the show's name is Impact, and throughout my career and life, I've met some amazing, impactful people that have made a difference, and I want to bring those to the air. So I want to have a show where you're learning a little bit and you're seeing a little bit of who's behind the curtain. And today I'm excited that we've got AJ Harmon, who's a financial advisor. AJ, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure. I love talking finance. I'm excited to share some stuff with you.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have you. So I want to dive right into it. Tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm a financial professional. I am an investment advisor representative, and I was very specific there because there are a lot of different financial professionals, and it's important to know specifically the one that you're working with. My job, I like what you said. My job, I help people with money, and my goal is to help you achieve your goals with your money and what you've done. So investment advisor representative is a specific financial professional. We've passed a Series 65 exam. They've got a couple different iterations, but I'm a fiduciary, so I have a legal obligation to do what's in your or my client's best interest, not mine, not my business, not anyone else. And then my compensation is tied to a fixed fee, not a commission or tied to selling something. So I'm the one who is your advisor, the guy you call when you have a question, the person who's watching out for you. I like to call myself the general contractor of your finances. If you were going to build a house, you would tell the general contractor what you wanted, and then he would go find all of the things that you needed to achieve your goal. My clients tell me what it is that they want. I take a look at their situation, and we work together to achieve their goal. And we bring in other professionals when it's appropriate, right? So if a goal is to purchase a house, we interact with a loan originator and a realtor to help them achieve that goal.
That's wonderful. And how does that look as far as helping them with that goal? Have you ever had times where you've had to say to someone, hey, you're not going to hit this because of X? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's a tricky thing, right? I talk a lot about, or I really try to understand the root of a problem. A lot of the times, I believe if we were doing everything the right way, we inherently know what we want, right? And if we knew the best path to get there, we would probably have it, right? So if we were all good with our money and we all knew what to do with money, we probably wouldn't need a financial advisor, right? And I would say, it's no secret that, the United States, individuals were not financially healthy, right? There's not a good financial health, knowledge, behaviors. So if we don't understand why it's happening, right, I can say whatever, and we still won't get there. We need to understand why and change behaviors so that we can achieve that goal. So I find what I say is not always exactly that. I have to give them an alternative. If you want this, then you have to do that. And it becomes a cost benefit, right? Hey, if you want to retire at 50, you can, but you have to save more, right? You can't go do X, Y, Z, or hey, you're on track so you can keep doing what you're doing, or hey, you're well ahead, you can retire earlier than you. My job is to really give an accurate representation of where they are, and then a reasonable expectation of what they would need to do to get to where they want to be. Right? And then I articulate that my job is to give people that information. And I love helping people, and help I don't feel like should always come with a fee. So there's a lot of times where I'll give a lot of that help, just coming in, just talking. So the way I largely market myself, because obviously I've got to, feed my kid and whatnot, is I will tell you the best way to get there, but who wants to do that? Who wants to do all the work? Let me do the work for you, and that's what my fee is. But there's a hidden reason why I do that. The hidden reason, because the problem with most of our financial situations is us. If we removed us from the situation, we would hit our goals. But the desire for today's coffee is significantly stronger than retirement 40 years from now, right? So and our emotions get in the way. It's largely our behaviors. We know when we're spending too much, right? We know when we're not saving too much, and we know when we want that coffee that we shouldn't buy. So a lot of us, we're inherently doing what we want to in the moment. My job is to show, hey, if that coffee may be more than $5, like, hey, that's $1,000 coffee in the future, whatever those numbers work out to, or help them understand. They don't see the impact of their decisions today, tomorrow, right? And that's what I bring them. I'm time. Let me see the ramifications. So.
Yeah, it's almost like you're putting the mirror in their face of explaining the benefits of, I guess, what people have referred to as delayed gratification.
Yeah, exactly. And there are definitely a lot of individuals who don't know. If they had more knowledge, they'd definitely be able to do better things or go a little bit further. And I think that regardless of knowledge, that's where someone like myself would come in. My parents did all of the right things with their money. They didn't do any of the best things, right? So my mom knew to live within her means and to save and not overspend. But that just puts you in a good situation to be able to take advantage of your situation to grow wealth. And no one was going to talk to her about what to do with her money or my parents' money. And at one point in my life, and I've struggled with finance at times, right? It's part of my passion, part of my why. I can understand people's positions because I've been there before, and I can relate. But it was seeing the impact that this information gave my parents, right? Really made that difference of sticking around. But when back to the original point of why try my hardest to remove the source of failure, right? So my parents did everything right, but they didn't know to do anything wrong. That's where I come in. Now that you're in a good spot, we can leverage it to achieve your goals. I had a client come in the other day. He wanted to take on some new investments, and it was a riskier one, which didn't make sense. So I wanted to poke a lot. Like, you were in a CD before, and now you want to buy crypto, right? Super volatile, doesn't fit, right? He wanted to do it in a smart way, right? Manageable, he could withstand the risk if he had lost it. But after poking enough, right, I found out why he wanted to do it was because he wanted to buy his wife the vacation home that she had always wanted. And what I told him was the reason he works with me is to tell me what he wants, because I told him that he was doing everything the right way, but if it worked out. But what he wasn't seeing was how he could have actually hurt what he was trying to achieve. And I showed him, hey, if what your goal is to get that house, let's start there, right? We sat down, we looked at his situation, and they had done enough of the right stuff that with this higher level knowledge, the knowledge that comes from living in it, right? A person who lives in something knows it better than the person who only touches it a little bit. Showed him some neat tips and tricks, but most importantly, educated him to how to look at a house purchase as an asset and as cash flow, not as a pure expense. And I was able to show him that he didn't have to take more risk to achieve his goal, right? The prudent move there was to find the safest way to achieve the goal because he was already there. And it's those two balances, right? And it's tricky, right? I have to listen. I have to keep the clients around because I have to listen to their true why, because we really do want to we know what we want to do, but sometimes the road we choose to get there gets in our way.
Yeah, and having that outside voice to find out and to poke. I love how you mentioned or how you use that. So you're asking probing questions and finding out people's whys. I'm curious on yours. What's your why?
So that's a great one. My why is my son. Right? I know I mentioned him earlier just a few minutes ago, and I mean he's my everything. But the why behind the why is he's the cutest little kid, and he can name dinosaurs that I can't even name, and his attention to the past is crazy. He wants to be an archaeologist. He wants to go dig up dinosaur bones, right? And there's two ways to be an archaeologist, right? You can be a professor of archaeology because you have bills to pay and you need a check, and those guys very rarely get to go out and actually touch dinosaur bones. My son wants to be an archaeologist, but not that kind, right? The other kind is the one whose research is funded, right? And you can go beg everyone who has money to fund your research because you think you know where some dinosaur is, and you have to prove it to them, right? And they may not, or they'll have limits, or he could say, Dad, right? Like, that's my dream. And if he's been the kid that I want him, if he's earned it, you don't just give, but if he's earned it, I'll fund that, fund that research. And I have to understand money. I have to be able to do more than what one lifetime can do, and you need that knowledge. And then I'm very fortunate. I think finance is probably the only industry where you can make a lot of money by doing a lot of good. I think teachers are one of the best and most important professions in the world. Like, they shape our youth. Like, they should be paid way more than they are, right? And they help so. Like, my kid can read. He couldn't read 6 months ago. He can read now. He's in kindergarten because of his teacher. Right? It opened his world. I'd love to help. Luckily, I can do both here. And then if I can take that knowledge and I can turn my hard work into a way to affect my family forever, so that my future, my lineage, right, their journey isn't as hard as mine. When my mom was the first one to go to college, my dad grew up on a dirt floor, they worked real hard so that I'd have the opportunity to do something with my brain instead of my hands. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but at that time it was, you go to school, and you go to college, and you get a good job, and so that's what I did, right? The trades look a lot more fun. They get paid a lot more these days than they did when I was younger. So
They certainly do. They do. And, I do love how you've gone through the progression of your family and building a legacy, and the beauty of, and I think our careers are parallel in a way, because the more people you help, the more impact that you can make. And when you have had a personal connection to maybe the struggles that some of your clients have, if you're open to sharing, what caused some of your financial struggles when you were younger?
Something that should be villainized. I was met by, and I won't use the brand, actually, they've become a much better credit card company since those days, but I was introduced to a salesperson from a credit card company before I got to my dorm on freshman walk-in day, kind of thing, right? So I was introduced to credit cards right around the same time that I was introduced to freedom, right? And those two things don't mix. And debt, especially bad debt, is a very painful thing, a very hard thing to get rid of. And I started my journey as if 40 or whatever I paid for college wasn't enough. Like, I wasn't getting those bills, so I didn't know it at the time. I also racked up a bunch of credit card debt that followed me for a long time. And then I'll honestly say, I kind of think I did one of the things that I've seen a lot of my clients do. They have a goal that they want to focus on relentlessly. For them, it's retirement. So they go to work every day and they don't focus on the plan, right? They don't have a written plan to get to where they're going. Life happens, and if they're lucky, they get there and they're in a good spot. I kind of did the same thing with my business earlier in my life, where I was so in it, I just went and I just did it, knowing that the best thing financially was to go do work and make more money, but I didn't have a plan. Right? And I remember the day that I wrote the check that was going to bring my account, I was rent, and I didn't have enough money for tomorrow, right? And I said never again, all those things, right? And because of those moments, I know what it's like when someone makes a statement that doesn't make any sense at all to anyone else. Right? Because we sabotage ourselves with our money all the time, and sometimes it's a sensitive time. It's tough to say. People always feel like they failed, right? I've had millionaires come in and feel like they failed, right? Everybody who doesn't have, everyone feels like they don't have enough, right? I tell them stop, like it's everything you sacrificed. I apologize, I went too much on a tangent there, but
but I'll tell you what strikes me about you is your level of empathy.
Yes.
And it seems that you're bringing empathy to your profession and to your clients.
I think it's necessary. I think that I touch retirement, right? So I think it's funny. I honestly say I leave the earlier parts of my job to the sexier guys, the ones with the ties, and they're arguing about returns on investments in the second year. And in reality, it's more of an image that, because those are accumulation advisors, that what they are, they're people who just want to look at the numbers, right? And they're great when you're young, and the only thing you need to pay attention to is the numbers, because you got 20 years, 30 years, just grow it. But when retirement hits, it's so different. It's so much less about the money, right? I've seen people stop working, sit in a chair, and die, right? Why was their advisor not talking about what are you going to do now? You know, now that you have time, right? If you were a carpenter, I worked as a carpenter, and you stopped swinging your hammer, and that was your personal identity, who are you now? Is there a plan for that, right? Or have you only been focusing on the money? Who cares if you have $10 million if every day you go to sleep afraid or nervous or not doing what you want, right? I believe that if retirement is everything you've worked towards, you need to work with someone who's listening to everything that's important to you, because they're going to help affect you getting it. Behaviors have to change, and I'll tell you, the answer is always having a strong why, right? It's why I've come back to that, because I will tell you my job is the most frustrating job in the world. It's because we get in our own way. If I said to you, you don't know anything about rocket science or rocket telemetry, okay, no, I'm not a rocket scientist. Well, don't have any clients who are financial advisors, right? I don't have any clients or prospects who spent any amount of research and digging into finance the way rocket scientists would dig into rocket science. But because people handle money every day, try telling them they don't know something, or that the approach that they're taking is wrong. Because they've been holding it for 65 years, they are a professional at money. And my job is I'm more of a therapist, I am more of a coach, I am more of a behavior corrector. I am trying to get you to see how your behaviors are getting you the result that you have. And if you want a different result, we have to change those patterns. And a lot of it is having a why, right? If someone whispered into your ear the consequence of that Starbucks every time you pulled up to Starbucks, there would probably be some times that you didn't buy, right? There'd be times that I wanted that coffee, so you still got it, but you'd be doing daily cost benefit analysis. Is it worth it today, right? No, I'm not that tired, or no. And so when your why is really strong, right? When I've had the most stubborn client, the last thing I want to do is get to work in the morning, or whatever, right? It's my son, digging up a dinosaur bone. That's my why, right? And when I build my plans, when I talk to people, when I give them advice, I use a filter of reality, right? If the plan's too tight, too strict, no one's going to stick to it. It has to be doable. And sometimes people, if you weren't intentional until your 50s, you have to make big changes. And if I float in front of you, those big changes aren't going to be worth it. But if we start talking about that lifelong goal, right, that the client who wanted to make that investment, right? But until I identified why, I could not get him to even contemplate another. He was so sold out. But then as soon as I brought his why in, I said, hey, this might actually affect your ability to achieve your why. Everything changed, right? And now he was open. So if empathy gets me to their why, it helps me understand if they have one. It helps me to put their why in front of them. My second appointments start with, I write on the board what I feel you would give up something for, right? Because you're going to have to give up return to play it safe, right? So I started with, did I have my listening ears on, right? Would you sell out for this, right? And for this client, it was buying his wife the house she always wanted. And the answer is yes. But hey, do you want to make 0.5% more? You start looking at just the numbers. You can't get people to deviate from what they want to do, even though what they want to do doesn't get them to their goal. So I have to, it's like parenting, actually, now that I think about it. Just like with my kid, my kid does not want to brush his teeth, but he wants to keep his teeth, so I have to tell him to brush his teeth so that he isn't sorry in the future that he doesn't have any teeth. It might be a crass analogy, but it's kind of the same thing. It's, hey, let me remind you why, so that now you can make an educated decision or a real life decision instead of an emotional impulse. And money is very good at eliciting emotional impulse. And I was listening to something the other day, and I thought this was the craziest exercise in the world. I challenge everyone out there to do it. I do it now before any financial decision. But if you go back in time and you do a life audit, and you pick the biggest mistakes of your life, the worst decisions you've ever made, I'm willing to bet 80% of them were made emotionally, right? So how can we stop ourselves from making 4 out of 5 of the worst decisions of our lives? Don't make them while we're emotional. Most of those are around money, especially if people knew what they lost by making their emotional choice. I've never told my parents where they would be if my dad hadn't taken that advice from his friend at the water cooler. There's nothing we could do about it now, and a lot of money would be sunk. That loss it's very painful, and it hides. That's the one that gets us to move what you would lose if you did it right. This would probably crush her. My mom did all the financial stuff. It was like the one financial decision she listened to my dad. But it's helping people make sure that they have all of the right information and they're using the right lenses to make right financial decisions. And right here only means the financial decision that gets you to your goal, right? I know our conversation originally started about product. I think, actually, it was your dad, I think you said this, right? There is no bad tool, just bad applications of tools. And it is such a true statement. 2 tools that have the worst name, I've seen people who absolutely need it, and they refuse to get it, where if they knew about it, they would recognize, hey, that was the tool you just never pick up, and then you get this one job, right? I was fixing an AC compressor the other day, and I had to take out a tool I'd never used, and it's just rare. Right? If you use it for a screw, it's not going to work. So annuity and reverse mortgage are the 2 that have such a bad name, but they solve some very bad problems. And if you're in one of those bad problems, this tool can get you out. And I have seen people stay in their problem just because they didn't want to get the information because of an emotion. Right? My job is to try and, I hope you let me break into that path, break in and show you how you might be wrong. And the most important thing I always tell if you need trust with a financial advisor, because I'm going to tell you you're wrong and you need to believe me. And when you're 80, I want to start working with you when you're 60, because when you're 80, you aren't even going to listen to your kids. Well, there's a chance, right? You need, and they trust and advice and educate. It's really simple, but the hard part is don't follow your emotion.
Yeah, I think it's
it's
like eating the cake, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm using probably a bad analogy, but if you ate it 365 days a year.
Exactly. We cannot impulsively, if we impulsively do what we want every day, we're never going to get to the dedicated, committed choice that we have to work towards, right? Do we all wish we were already there? Yep. Right, but my original plan had me there at like 25, right? Because I was 18, I was going to own the world by 22, and then the world taught me, things happen a little bit slower, but so.
Yeah, I love those analogies, because I think that those analogies really hit home, and sometimes it makes it easier for people to digest. And I'm going to go back to something that you said earlier about, maybe it's the advisors or the planners that are just, trying to accumulate the most amount of money in management, that there's a difference between, you as a fiduciary taking that out of the equation of, hey, I'm just trying to accumulate as much as I can, and really honing in on what your client's needs and desires and their wants are.
Yeah, and I think one of the trickiest things is the knowledge that you need to get yourself into a good spot where you can trust. I have a client who we started, and he's like, I don't know anything about this, I'm just going to trust you. And he luckily started with a good one who was looking at all of these things. there are ways to be a fiduciary and not do everything that I do. Right? I use this term because it helps me draw a wedge between me and other advisors. I don't mean to insult them, but there are some advisors, I use the term statement gatherer. They provide a great service for people who need their assets managed, right? That's a very important job. And for many of us, that's all we do. And that's okay, as long as we're aware that all they do is manage the investments, right? I do that, right? We have a team of portfolios, but we are also paying attention to your income plan, or we're paying attention to your taxes, Social Security. We're doing a Medicare consultation, so you understand that. We're going to explain the steps of retirement, so you understand what happens. I had a client once who thought that meant you had to stop working, you could never do anything else again. He was a musician. He was fearful. I'm paying attention to tax because for me, I've learned that's the best way for me to affect somebody. And then we're also going to pay attention to your legacy, because if we're doing all these things the right way, you're going to have stuff that you want to pass, and you probably have causes and people and things you care about, and we can affect those if we start now. Right? My sister wants a family trust, which I think caught me off guard. I think it's great, but she can make that happen because she's planning for it in her 30s. It's an interesting puzzle, right? As you start to put all those puzzle pieces, know who you're working with so that you can make sure he's the right one to help you get your job. If you want to focus on retirement, a statement gatherer or an accumulation advisor, someone to help you grow your money, is probably not the best advisor for you. I mean, I've never had a person going into retirement who said their primary focus is growing their money. It usually switches to protecting their money. So a retirement advisor is going to focus a lot more on protecting, with a secondary focus on growth, which is how retirees' minds work. So if you're in the other spot, that might not be the best professional for you. And know what they do, why they do it, and ask them where they would bring in somebody else. What parts don't you do well?
Yeah, well, I've got to say, AJ, that this has been so informative. AJ, I wanted to say thank you so much. I could spend hours talking to you. I can feel your passion. I can feel that he's a gentleman that wants to help his clients. So we're touching on the money, and we're touching on the impact, title of the show. And again, I'm Suzanne Caldeira. This is Money and Impact. Thank you so much for watching.